All right, this is another permaculture video game code tour, and what I'm going to demonstrate here, following up from the video that just rolled of the gameplay, which showed something that I have been working on and it has been evading me, which is to trigger a function at a certain point based on certain conditions that would swap out the background and all of the elements, all the objects that were in the level that you had to traverse in the scrolling environment in order to get, once you get to the end of the level, then you get into the transition to a new level or a new environment. And so obviously that involves having to swap out all those images and doing that programmatically, which I did not want to. There are ways that I know of where you can kind of tag everything and group them and then kind of select them, but I'm trying to do it as simple as possible. So the approach that I have taken with this, which I'm going to start walking through now, is just the idea of right here at the top, the body has got the background image, it repeats, it references a URL, and that's the beginning stage where you start out, and that's what happens in the background. And then when you get to the end of the level and you made it to the criteria of being able to pass the level, that's where it goes down to where this functionality is here that I'm going to go over. And it's this function that's called the permit office. So you made it past the gauntlet of corrupt police officers who are trying to get bribes out of you on your way to do the right thing and pay your permit. And I probably got hit a few times because I was just trying to demo the process of getting to the end of the level, and I wasn't evading the officers as I normally would in the gameplay. But so what happens is, according to this code here, I've arrived at the end of the level. All I got to do is basically walk into this permit office shipping container on the screen, and then it's going to, at a certain point, based on these measurements of the user's screen width minus, I'm starting with 350. That's generally so that once you get inside the container, it's gonna become aware that you've entered it, and then it's going to execute this next bit of code, which is where it gets really interesting for me. And I used code from 2012 that I found on a forum here, which is to create a variable named body that equals the document.getElements by tag name, and that grabs body, which is the top level of a style sheet. And for the life of me, I don't know what this bracketed 0 is doing, but then what gets executed is that now that, I don't know the exact term, I should know it, but I don't know it right now. Now that variable has been given a name, body, and it's functioning and can be called in this string right here, body.style.background image equals URL permit office front. So that is how I swapped out the background tiles and got them out of the way. And then the next interesting thing was that I figured out how to group all of the objects, elements, all the graphics from the first level environment, which is walking across the road or walking down the road to get to the permit office. In order to swap them out with one line of code, I grouped them all in under one div. So every graphic in that level has its own div. But I for me, it was clever enough to say, rather than try to select them by class or ID or whatever, I'm just gonna bracket them basically between within one div, so that I can do what I did here, which is document get element by ID, and then that one div is called get to permit office environment, and then .style.display equals none. So that wipes out the level that I had to traverse, the scrolling level, in order to then have the background obviously shifts right there above, and then the elements that you see at the end, which is the div that contains all of the next level's graphic elements, goes from being display none to display block. And then you see on the screen, also on the on the permit office, you see the screen of this sort of smarmy mercenary type staffer there to kind of hustle your permits for doing your permaculture design project. And so that's going to have its own little story. And then the next evolution from that point is the process of you doing a modern biometric transaction confirmation with digital assets in order to purchase your permits and go about your merry way. But I've got about, I don't know, 20 or 30 or 40 more of these swap out environments to create that have their own story, their own nuance, their own characters. But this core functionality of being able to have a coordinates based situation where you make it to the end of the level and it doesn't go on forever because you trigger a function that just swaps everything out. So boom, you get to be in like the movie mode, or in the just totally shift dimensions or shift angles or whatever. Everything is still there. Everything is still in an HTML file. But it is just toggling the block display and the none display, and doing that with the background, which I could not get to work inside of the divs, and then that chunk of divs within a div. And whatever, that's not the most elegant way to explain what I've achieved here, but for me, as not a genius and not a really experienced coder, this is just me trying to like put one step in front of the other and solve problems with the help of all of the forums on the interwebs and whatnot. This is what I've arrived at, and it works. And forgive the fact that you're able to see the feet of the sprite walk under the shipping container. I will fix that, but if you notice that, bear with me, because I'm just trying to get one thing working well at a time.